Hello everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of April the 10th to 16th, 2023. First of all, I would like to wish everyone who celebrates Easter today a very happy Easter. But of course, next week is also Easter week, Easter Sunday for other people who celebrate it according to the Orthodox faith. So I would also like to wish everyone else who celebrates it on the 16th of April, a very happy Easter as well. So now back to our horoscope. It is quite an intense week, and in a certain way, it does incorporate basically the message of Easter. Exactly our deepest contemplations about the value of sacrifice, what sacrifice means, perhaps what forms, shapes, and expressions sacrifice takes, what is a valid, acceptable sacrifice to us, our beings, even our egos, why not, and what, of course, isn't. And this is because one of the most relevant celestial conversations that we have next week is a conversation of tension between Saturn in the sign of Pisces. So, exactly the sacrifice. And Saturn is the great karmic lord, the judge, the evaluator. Basically, the alchemical expression of Saturn is it is what permits anything spiritual or anything existing in spirit to manifest into matter or not, of course, or to block it. And this is where, in the sign of Pisces, well, sometimes it is more permissive. Other times it is less permissive because Pisces is extremely mutable. It can represent both sides of the spectrum, even of the spirit, of the psyche, of the deep emotion, of the unconscious, etc. So it even dissolves physical borders, Saturn. But other times when it acts as divine protection, ultimately, maybe that Saturn cannot be overcome by anything opposing, anything adversary. For example, harm, danger, bad will, etc. So when that Saturn in Pisces acts as divine protection, then it is extraordinarily powerful. But when it is, a weakness in that sense, well, it is less protective than in any other circumstances because, Pisces would dissolve even Saturn. And Pisces is super strong all this period because the ruler Neptune is in it. So even Saturn has a tough time, keeping its own limits in place. But what I want to say here is that that is Saturn's expression of Pisces, but then there is Venus in Gemini. Venus in the sign of Gemini, well, she might be the esoteric ruler of this sign. Gemini does have a Venusian deacon to it as well, but at the same time, Venus does not have a lot of stability in Gemini, or she swings. Like a pendulum between the two extremes. Venus is in Gemini can take on certain expressions unique to that sign where one can actually be in love with two people at the same time, especially if those people are total contradictory to each other, like being in love with an angel and the devil as well. And for Venus in Gemini, that's not all that wrong. That's neither all that impossible. Venus also, loves being in Gemini because in this sign she gets a certain kind of freedom, a Uranian freedom, and also a Mercurial freedom. She is very mutable herself in the sign of Gemini, and this is where her borders, her limitations don't really exist. And if they do, they're just words, if you know what I mean. Where the no means actually a yes. Where the verbal rejection is actually a actual invitation to do it. So This is why a lot of other astrologers consider that Venus is not all that stable, a bit bipolar. So Venus, the heart, the value, and also square Saturn, what we permit, what is moral, what is ethical, and even and Saturn in Pisces. Now, please excuse me for this terms that I'm going to use because they might be a bit religious, but sorry, Pisces, and especially the symbol of the 12th house is the house of faith, that kind of faith as well. Yes, it's also Sagittarius, but it's also Pisces. So, where I'm going with this is yes, it might be what is sin. Where is the borderline between the sin and something acceptable? Can the divine exist even within sinful acts? And this might be a total dichotomy, even in a theological way, yet there is Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, highlighting that dichotomies can coexist with one another. And of course, where there are dichotomies on Earth, that means there are also dichotomies in spirit, or, at least the essence of all things. So, yes, sometimes, and excuse me, I'm not a theologist, but I may have this opinion or personal, view of things that many times the divine pattern, the divine will, the divine even grace can very well mold itself or disguise itself as sin, just like a, let's say, virus, if you know what I mean, and get into the heart of sin and then unleash its divine essence, saving the person, saving the situation, or making the act of the sin be actually a divine guiding force for the players, energies, whatever, who otherwise would be totally blind, oblivious to the divine and its benevolence. If it has to, the divine can also use some rather unorthodox expressions to do its job, its benevolent job, and ultimately, astrology in itself, the integrity of it, has to affirm, regardless if it's Vedic, if it's sidereal, whatever, that every planetary expression ultimately has to be, should be benevolent in nature. Even Pluto, even Orcus, even Ixion, even Algol. Yes, there are energies which are seen more destructive, which are seen as sometimes, let's say, Algol evil. But there is such a thing as necessary evil. And there are very, very dual power players in astrology who are, actually are is the correct term, because they are both highly benevolent, both seen as the most divine graces, and at the same time something that is the total opposite of it. And one example here is the Pleiades, the seven sisters. Even in Jewish, mythology, even in the Kabbalah and the history of it, those were seven demonesses, as in princesses, but at the same time, seven virtues, archangels, etc. So, there are certain energies there who come in the pack, where we can see the duality of it as the angelic expression being the higher form, being the divine reflection, and it has a shadow. Every light casts a shadow. It would not cast a shadow in the divine planes, but here down on earth in telluric plane, it has to cast a shadow. And the shadow is just as how should I say, powerful, if that can even be used in this sense, but powerful, or powerful seen from our limited perspective as the higher expression, because they are like Gemini twins. And this is where I want to get. So, Venus squaring Saturn, what is moral, what is ethical, what is sinful, what is not. And it can be the same thing, and it's just a matter of inner intent. It is matter of Saturn and Pisces, our own spiritual history. As in, if we had a moment in life when we deeply understood something, a situation, a feeling, someone's example, we lost our innocence. We have the awareness, we have the knowledge. We will not be excused karmically when it happens again, or if it's our turn. We are not seen as, someone all that innocent, because we had the knowledge. It was bestowed upon us prior to that. So, but this is where exactly the same thing situation, as I said, can be for the innocent a healthy compromise, something that leads somewhere. But for the not so innocent, it is ultimately, without a doubt, a karmic temptation that must be not followed in that sense. So, Venus in Gemini has a lot of very practical uses. So let's say someone wants to quit a job, and at the last minute the job comes with 10 million benefits. And even if a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, and all through that time, that person was committed, that at that the first opportunity I get, I am leaving this company, this job, this whatever. I am without a doubt leaving. No turning back. And even that person will have a good second thought when that 10 million opportunities like are vomited out from nowhere. But this is when, what will that person do? Is it all that simple? No, because that person can very well say, well, okay, but finally they got me everything that they owed me, all the honors, benefits, salary raise, niceness, whatever, it's here on the table now, it's mine. So, I got what I wanted, so I might as well stay, I have the experience. But that person can say, it's way too little, too late, my heart is broken, I'm burned out, my inner fire is gone, you are just really the past to me. And what is correct and what is not? Well, there isn't anything correct and there isn't, because you have to be the karmic judge, you have to be the ultimate judge this time. This is why this conversation between these two planets is so very delicate and so very individualistic. Now, collectively out there, this might be, of course, panic mode, because Saturn in Pisces, something imminent that is, Pisces, pay up, pal, either a karmic payment, debt, global debt, a country's debt, resources, health situation, Pisces is confinement. So if a country made its citizens feel extremely confined, so something reaches the end of the tolerance. This is just Venus, of course, no big deal, right? A bit of I'm gonna change my attitude. Of Gemini, Venus in Gemini, I'm gonna change my attitude, I'm gonna change how I speak about it, I'm not gonna support this and that. Yes, this is how it begins, but we must not forget that the week after next week, we have an eclipse in an erratic Aries. Now, this is where every astrologer has its own take on it, So even though my take will probably not correspond to the majority of astrologers out there, I do see this as like a cusp eclipse. Absolutely, it's undeniable that mathematically is in 29 degrees 50 minutes Aries, so it's Aries and erratic again. But at the same time, that is already 1 foot into Taurus, as in the gateway. It is where Aries, it is the gate between Aries and Taurus. The first breath Aries, you know, the the creation, the birth itself. But Taurus is when the whatever is born is already learning to use its five, it becomes its five senses firstly, and the lower ego is activated. So that is why that gateway is so important collectively. Individually, you know, for everyone in their own unique placement and conversations within their chart, of course, absolutely. But collectively, it means a huge moment of maturization for a collective, the species as a whole. So it's quite powerful. And we must also not forget that the North Node is in Taurus, and the North Node makes this an eclipse. It is also an annular eclipse, so it's quite a ring of fire. So it's quite symbolic, suggestive, powerful, fated, a lot of fated element. But this is where the fated is dual. Usually, the advice never ever set intention and try to influence an eclipse in any way because it is fate unfolding and we need to have our eyes, the eyes of our spirit, of course, peeled and just observe, listen, comprehend, contemplate about it. But with this Aries energy, we need to push our wills into this because what we will manifest in a collective way, but in a real, literal way. This isn't like any other eclipse. This is rare, very, very rare, and not because of the exactity of the degrees and stuff like that. No, no, because of the other energies. Pluto is squaring the North Node at this moment, and as I said, it's like a cusp eclipse, the radius of the sun. So we can also say that Pluto holds an outer sign square with the eclipse. So that's strongly fated. And so much so that anything that would go against the manifestation of fate ultimately will be made totally powerless. Pluto, the element of powerlessness, but it will make powerless what wants to block the manifestation of the eclipse. So we will see this collectively out there starting already this week, because this is where I wanted to go. Venus squaring the Saturn, what will start the blockages, the powerlessness will settle in. And it's a good powerlessness. Whatever out there in the world is made powerless, that is meant to be powerless. So efforts to not make it powerless or to mend its powerlessness, of course, will be futile. So we must, the wisest thing to do, whatever is made powerless collectively out there, a symbol of power, something. Well, it's meant to be that way. That means we must focus on where the power lies. Whatever is made powerless, we must kind of say, well, it's kind of lost. So we immediately must seek, but where does the power lie? Our personal power. And that is what we need to work with the eclipse, because everyone will want to create, conjure up, invite, etc., etc., into their life with this eclipse. Either an opportunity, a breakthrough, a realization, a moment of courage, a self birth moment. I want to become this, and well, birth yourself. Identity. I mean, there are so many people out there who truly kind of stripped so much of their human identity. Why? Because it was full of false values. Not why? Because our times are packed with it. But they didn't really find the something to replace it with, if you know what I mean. Everyone strips off the false identity, everyone purges it out, don't get me wrong, but there are some people, some souls who cannot feed back the missing parts. For them it's lost forever and they might feel broken. Well, this eclipse changes that. You know, this is where, even if you cannot find the dream, the dream to, you cannot find the benevolence to birth yourself, then allow the divine to do it for you, because but then accept it after it does. But you kind of know that this is how it works. So but anyway, that eclipse will, and this week is ultimately under the shadow of that eclipse, preparing us, pulling the strings together. We will feel this extremely intensely, of course. Again, uh Venus conversing in tension with that Saturn in Pisces will show us the duplicity of life, of reality, of our own mind, our choices, our decisions. But this is where, and of course, I strongly doubt that anyone can choose the middle path at this moment, because there is no gray. So the best is not to make a choice, but to focus on that which we are. As in, put ourselves in that side of the spectrum, not in an extreme way, but through association, not opposing, not countering the other, not negating the other, accepting the other, but still placing ourselves in that Venus, which is truly, truly, because Venus in Gemini is ultimately who am I, based on what I love, my attractions, what my mind, my thoughts want, and the words that I speak. But yeah, Mercury is also in shadow, because Mercury is the words, and in Taurus. So Mercury is also preparing for its own retrogradation, and it will be shortly after the eclipse. So that's also very, very suggestive and symbolic, because Venus will, stir us up without a shadow of a doubt. So Mercury in the sign of Taurus retrograde will have to put mentally, of course, our values back together, to make sense to us, for us to understand them and to, be okay with it. And speaking about Venus, before, at the very, very beginning of the week, before she enters into the sign of Gemini, she is in an erratic Taurus, so 29 degrees of Taurus. Um, Conjunct a dwarf planet named Sedna, the power and the spirit of sacrifice. What is worth it to us and what is not? What is worth our time? What is worth our tears? What is worth our love? What is worth our bodily effort, sacrifice, whatever, if it's energy, if it's time, and what is not. And this Sedna, who is also preparing to change signs in June, um, she is the symbol of, you know, what happens with excessive sacrifice. She has a dark side to her as well, especially that sometimes sacrifice can simply not be paid off. Some acts of martyrdom will indebt everyone, the whole cosmos itself, in integrity forever. And the symbol of Easter is such an example where no one ever can, and in the infinity of time, so never means never, can pay off the martyrdom, the death, if, but it is not, it is unconditional. You know what I mean? Would it not be unconditional, the whole of the cosmos and perhaps the universe itself would be indebted to that act alone. So it's quite a big deal because Sedna is a very, very slow moving planet. So she's putting, really rubbing the salt into our collective wound about the worth, the value, but also the dark side of sacrifice and martyrdom. So we will see this without a doubt playing out on the world stage, but how? Venus conjunct Sedna, especially at this moment, when also Sedna changes signs and this powerful energetic energy, this means financial trouble. Perhaps a huge hit in the world of insurance. That area, that industry, insurance companies, banking, anything that has to do with risks, and also head institutions, the prime leaders on the market or whatever. This can be something, a blow to them. So, vehicles, Venus is also, and Sedna, but in a wide orb conjunct Algol, the head of all. So it is a really, really significant moment this year, this Venus at 29 degrees of Taurus cycle. It because something will be reflected financially in the world out there, and it will hit the news, etc., etc. And that it will be the symbol of the bad kind of sacrifice, or some debts being paid off, but in a rather dramatic manner. We will see. But let's speak about a lot of good energy that is out there. Saturn sextiles the North Node. So the North Node in Taurus, exactly our correct collective future forward. And that is a really, really, really good energy because it also means a divine pattern. Saturn in Pisces, the divine blueprint, the divine schematic, the divine structure. This is where the divine does not abandon. And the sextile, faith, strong moral background, the backbone of being truly, you know, standing tall and proud, but not in a bad pride, not in a sinful pride sense, in front of spirit, because you're embodying your faith and your highest morals principles and using that as sextile to fuel your dreams, your energy, your magic, your path in life, etc. That is strongly, rewarded now at this moment because Saturn enables, Saturn permits, Saturn basically in the sign of Pisces brings the life-giving waters. So this is a really, really good energy. Um, Also, another good energy is Mercury sextiling Mars. Mars being in the sign of Cancer. Mars in itself in Cancer, protector of the family, of borders. Mars in the sign of Cancer, it is the ultimate sign of defense. The strength lies in defense. And it this is where the spirit, emotion, heart, morality, community, Cancer, the union, communion, that's more like Saturn and Pisces, is the ultimate defense. Love, of course, is the ultimate defense. Um, but what I wanted, Saturn sextiling Mars, Mercury sextiling Mars, because Saturn did sextile Mars, but at the beginning of this week that just passed. But Mercury sextiling Mars, this is where what do words do? Encouraging words, blessings, sharing of resources, but this is very mental resources, inspirational soul food, anything, inspired words, or coming to the help of others with your mind, with your calculations, with your mercurial stuff. And for some people, without a shadow, this means singing. The power of song, the power of, non-verbal Taurian communication. And of course, this also has another element to it, holistic medicine. Because nature, Mercury and Taurus, has solution to any problem. All you need to do is seek it. Mars in Cancer. And Mars in Cancer is also all of your traditional, popular, medicine kind of thing. All the customs, all the traditions, all the herbs and stuff which the ancestors, all of that stuff is also, amongst other water, is also Cancer. Mars in Cancer, well, it can tap into the energy of that. And sextile Mercury, whatever you conjure up, or the cocktail of medicine or whatever, it works. But as I said, this is also a psychological energy. Words, the song, the dance, the I'm with you, or just the smiley, the gif. It does a lot of good at this time. But then there is another energy which is truly significant, because as I said, Venus square Saturn is one of it, but Venus also holds a trine with Pluto, so the hand of faith. And Venus trine Pluto, attractions, the power of attraction, fated attractions. Attractions are usually within the mind. Now, it is the mind that brings you there. Mind, thought, words, or intellectual values, etc., etc. Communication through internet, writing, like Gemini and Aquarius. But we already examined the duplicitary nature of that Venus and Saturn square, but then with the Venus and Pluto trine, if you find healthy limits of compromise, it gets you into the future. If, you know, that Venus and Saturn square means, uh, it is so against my principles because it's too futuristic. I'm not a huge fan of technology. I don't do that. My mom said never to do that. I'm a pure Christian, or whatever moral reason. Either because it doesn't match your principles, or Saturn and Pisces. Oh, I have 10 million traumas related to this. I'm vulnerable. I'm this. All the reasons. But where Venus comes with something that is, in a practical way, perhaps worth it. So perhaps saying totally no is not the best solution. It is the best solution because it is gone. The element of whatever is irritating you, whatever it doesn't match your principle, well, it will be gone because the opportunity is gone. The solution is gone. The offer is gone. Whatever is gone. But that means you will have to work for it solo. You will have to compensate. Would you kind of try and see where you can meet it? If perhaps a common ground, a common exception, a common compromise, something that is not all that much against your values, you can make it work in that sense. Would you find something like that? Then is when it's on. Because there is this trine between Pluto and Venus. Some powerful attraction, which it seems like a blessing, which gives you power, which might be a free resource in one way or another, is coming. Would you accept it or not? That's the Venus Saturn square. So see what happens in your life and what kind of this energy dishes out. Of course, Venus and Pluto trines are common aspects. They happen every single year. So it's that part is not, and neither is the Venus Sat, but in this configuration, in this manner, and where Pluto is activating the past great conjunction degree on December 2020 of meeting of Saturn and Jupiter, that is kind of special, you know. So yeah, I would say truly feel through what opportunities life gives you and how you can readapt both the opportunity and your principles to meet at a common place to try and be good bedfellows, because there is a lot of constructive side to this. And we must not forget the most important part, that this energy is preparing us for the eclipse. So the eclipse will unfold it anyway. You know, if you would say it's against my principles, no problem at all. This opportunity goes away, but then the eclipse, sorry, will knock on the door, and the morality of it, the karmic theme of it will still play out, and there is nothing you will do really. And another energy that is quite powerful, quite significant, really, really optimistic, and I need to include it, is Jupiter conjunct the Sun. Because that can be seen as lucky. That can be seen as fortunate. That can be seen as us making our own blessings. That expands willpower. That expands the sense of self, courage, ambition, determination, the fight, the the big principles, the big morals, the burning passions. You might say that, well, isn't this a little bit Martian? But yes, it is. But Mars is the ruling planet of Aries. Sun is very comfortable, very, very happy in the sign of Aries. Jupiter expands all of it, and it comes with the highest principles, with the element of fate, with the element that it is my right, my divine right. Now, I know this is not part of the horoscope, but we must not exaggerate divine right, because the Uranian, this is the Jupiterian truth, the subject, my divine right, but the Uranian truth, no one, there is no right, there is no law, there is nothing like this. We are living in the illusion that there is, but we have no zero, like truly zero rights. The illusion that we have rights is bestowed on all of creation minus the angelic being, because they just know everything, so they know that this is laughable, that the creator is very patient and with a smile on his tolerates that we live in the illusion that we have rights. And you know, when you see that a child is in a delusion but it's cute, it's not a bad delusion. Yeah, you like, yeah, it's Santa, yeah, of course. You know what I mean? So, yes. So, divine right, my sovereignty, the right and life and whatever given to me by the divine. Now, if this is not taken into exaggeration, and if we actually kind of process and know that this is like a role play that the divine permits for us to believe because it's easier that way, but really we have zero rights, okay? If we kind of know this energy can truly get us there. It truly activates the best in the self. Now, of course, this is a combustion energy because the sun combusts Jupiter as well. And Jupiter expand. This can also be seen as explosions, fires, fire hazards, fire dangers, boom, anything that has to do with explosion, fire, combustion, ignition, scorching, all of that. And the ruling planet of Mars, of Aries Mars, is out of bounds. So, yeah. And in Mars, it's passive aggressive. So it would love to explode. It waits for the explosion. It will not. It's not trigger happy. It waits. It waits. It waits. It waits. So that's the worst kind of Mars, if you ask me. So yeah, and if that wasn't enough, Jupiter and the Sun together very, as I said, explosive energy. But let's look at the positive side. The explosion of your beliefs, of your faith, of your justice, of your highest principles. That usually means something really, really good blessing or good fortune. But it can also be the explosion of ego, of me, my right, I believe I have all the rights, stuff like that. Yes, absolutely, but I doubt that will get you all that far. And this is also violent energy. But the eclipse is also extraordinarily violent. Yeah, we cannot not mention this side of it, that it is violent and it is angry and it is wrathful. And yes, absolutely, some beings, some energies will express like that. But it can very well be the moment of courage and big leap of faith that gets everyone to where they need to be. So, yes, let us make sure that it's rather the big Jupiterian moment. But after it kind of disconjuncts Jupiter, the Sun will conjunct at the end of the week Eris. So, again, the rebellious energy, the truth seeking energy. Eris is exactly what I said. My right, my, taken into the most extremes. So yeah, there is gonna be a lot of unrest, a lot of, I do believe, legal discussions, protests. Then, at also at the very end of the week, this Jupiter squares Pallas Athena in the sign of Cancer. Now, Pallas Athena in the sign of Cancer will probably cause a lot of disruption and unrest in the agricultural field or some industries where there are workers, because Palestina in Cancer is syndicate and workers protection, not really legally, paralegally, so even higher than the law, if you know what I mean. Who will come up with the tactics to disrupt everything to make their voices heard? So this will be shocking. There might be food disruptions at certain places because of protests and stuff like that. And Venus square, Venus in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces, flooding or flash flooding, if that's how it is, like unexpected. It just comes. Deluges. It can also represent, as I said, something either growing overnight, ridiculously, almost to the impossible in value overnight, or something dropping to the same ridiculousness. And Saturn and Pisces, this can be like fuel as well, or some, oh, and this Saturn and Venus square will also come up with some archaeological discoveries that will shock us and will cause huge historic debates. So again, who is who, what, who did what, this subject will be reopened. And Mercury retrograde in the sign of Taurus will add to this a lot, digging up the past. Why? Because values need to be set straight. Which, for example, which culture, country, people owes which for what they done in which war, and so, and my rights, your right again. But this is part of the deal until Jupiter hangs out in Aries. And there was just a past full moon in Libra. So this theme was already started. So, yes, it is definitely going to be quite an intense week. And the value of sacrifice and what our morality limits us from and what it protects us from, both at the same time, will be extremely visible, felt, palpable. Uh, no, Gemini is the gateway, to the 3D. Our mind is our gateway to the perception of the 3D world. So it will be perceived in a very Gemini way. So that's very direct. That will truly make us. I can't even say think, but Gemini has. I have to a bit think, but where Venus also feel it through think with the heart a little bit. Gemini is not all that heart energy, but Gemini is intelligence energy, and it knows when to send the wholeness of the being to the heart. Don't ask me, ask the heart. You know what I mean? And the heart, Leo, in this sense, well, it does host Black Moon Lilith. So the heart is very, 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 very painfully, uncomfortably honest at this time with us, with the self, but with everyone else, parent, child, lover, or whoever, it will be honest. So I would like to leave it at this. Thank you everyone for all the love. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the generosity. If you'd like to support me, you can donate in the PayPal link in the description below. Thank you again for listening, and I'm wishing everyone a very, very happy and blessed Easter. And let us all truly embrace the spirit of sacrifice, because that is how we can make those sextiles work for us the best. Thank you again. Until next time. Bye for now.